Dear sisters and brothers, I want to devote this session to a study. It is study because I have a few materials to present to you, but we have to search for conclusions that can be derived. And I myself do not know the conclusions. So it is a real exploration. And this is on a subject which is at present very vital in the minds of residents of Auroville, and that is self-governance. The word self-governance is very dear to residents of Auroville, as it must be. There are, however, in Auroville, certain ideas in regard to self-governance which are quite correct, but there are some others which are not so correct. There is at present a mixture of what can be called a true aspiration for self-governance but there is also at the same time, and this is my view, a mixture of egoistic conception of self-governance. And I think we need to explore as to how we can arrive at true conception of self-governance and how we can go about implementing that correct idea. Let me first take you rapidly through the history of self-governance of Auroville. I think it is necessary because we have reached a critical stage in Auroville where a review of the past may help us to move forward to a future so that we may not commit some of the mistakes which are committed in the past and our path may be more smooth. When the mother declared the Charter of Auroville in 1968, she declared it very clearly, Auroville does not belong to anybody. This was the underlying idea for proclaiming true self-governance of Auroville. When she declared to live in Auroville, one must be a willing servitor of divine consciousness, she defined what is that self-governance, true self-governance of Auroville. It is soul governance. It is governance by the divine. To declare that this Auroville has to be governed only by one authority, authority of the truth, the authority of the divine. And that is the true meaning of self-governance. Now, this proposition is completely new in the history of the world. Never was any group, any country created with this declaration that this land is, this whole concept, this land, this experience is dedicated to the divine and divine alone. So to my mind, the real conception of self-governance is Auroville governed by the divine's will, in which divine is recognized as an authority, and therefore no other authority at all. This is the starting point. And soon after the development of Auroville, there was a rapid development right up to 1973. All decisions were taken by the mother, by the divine's will. But soon after mother left her body, a certain phenomenon arose on account of two important facts. One is the law of the land, that the land and property of the land has to be owned by somebody. It's a practical fact. This was not germane to Auroville's existence, but practically you cannot have any land without a proprietor. This is the legacy of the past, you might say, that property must have an owner. The second fact was that for the sake of this law, which is not the divine law, but this law was complicated by the fact that you can either have a private land property or you can have a collective property, and the collective property can be owned only by a collective body. And this collective body must be in the form of either a public trust or a registered society or a corporation. There is no other way by which public property can be held. As a result, this property, which was being bought at that time for Auroville as an offering to the divine, so the divine may take possession of it, and it may belong to the divine. In 1973, it became clear by various kinds of phenomena which occurred that this land belonged to Sri Aurobindo Society. That Sri Aurobindo Society is a registered society. And the further complicated fact was that every registered society must have a governing body, must have by law. And therefore this society had an authority, a governing body. Now these are the important facts to start with. Now it all depended upon how we looked upon this governing body of society, how it looked upon the property, how it looked upon the people of Auroville, and here their ambiguity arose. With all goodwill on the part of everybody, everybody did his best. But there arose, I am only telling you as a phenomenon, there arose a conflict between a number of people in Auroville, and this management of Sri Aurobindo Society. I am narrating this because it is very important to remember, when we speak of self-governance, what do we mean? And how we should go about it so that we don't again repeat the same mistakes of the past. When this conflict arose, it became clear to some, or many, that there was some misunderstanding and that everything was not so clear as was intended in the Charter of Auroville, in the declaration of the Charter, and the conditions which were laid for existence in Auroville. This assumption became clearer in due course when in the court of law, later on, the society clearly declared that Auroville is a project of Sri Aurobindo Society. Secondly, that Sri Aurobindo Society is a religious body. And thirdly, that Auroville is a religious organization. All the three propositions, which in truth were not valid. And then it is not necessary to enunciate the whole conflict that went through, but ultimately what happened was that the Supreme Court of India had to declare that Sri Aurobindo Society is not a religious body, that the teaching of Sri Aurobindo is not a religion, and that Auroville is not a religious body. And then the power to govern Auroville in 1982 was given by the Supreme Court's decision to the Government of India. And since it came into the hands of the Government of India, the intention was that once goodwill prevails and the misunderstandings are cleared, the management will go again back to Sri Aurobindo Society, because this takeover was only for a short time. For 7 years, the situation continued in that form. Ultimately, it was found that this clarity, this understanding was not dawning. And that the Government of India decided that a method should be found by which the original intention of the mother is honored by the Government of India, and arrangements should be made so that Auroville can move on the lines which have been envisaged for it in the Charter of Auroville and by the various directives which are given by the mother. What has to be done to effect this decision? The only way by which this could be effected was to create an act. This was the decision taken by the Government of India. There was no other way to implement these noble ideas and noble intentions of the government except through the creation of a law. And this law was therefore formulated And as you know, happily I was very much associated with the formulation of this law from the side of the government of India. And this law was enacted in 1988. And there are three important aspects of this law which are to be understood while speaking of self-governance of Auroville, by thinking of it, by implementing it. First of all, this law of the Government of India has made the Charter of Auroville given by the mother as a part of Indian law. This is a great achievement. Nobody can deny this charter and can act against this charter. Nobody. Secondly, and this is a most important point to be noted, as I said, in India there is no way, or in the world there is no way of holding a property except through a public trust or a corporation or a registered society. So one could have created a society, a new society, but that society has its own laws, which nobody can abrogate. And that law is that you can have a society, but you must have management body. And this management body is supreme. The question of self-governance of the people would be out of the question if it was made again a society. Therefore, it was thought that you should create by law a foundation, and all the land had to be transferred to that foundation. Now, this fact is very important to be noted. All the land which was purchased for Auroville, which was legally in charge of Sri Aurobindo Society till 1988, all that land was transferred, taken from that society and given to this foundation, so that this foundation can be so created in a new form that it would not be in any charge of any governing body, any management committee. Now, this was a bold act on the part of the government for the sake of Auroville, in the sense that to take property from somebody and to give it to another, normally you have to pay for it. But without any payment whatsoever, this entire land was just put into the foundation, and Sri Aurobindo Society very generously and wisely did not challenge it. And as a result, from 1988, all the land, it was now declared very clearly, did not belong to anybody excepting under the charter. Nobody can claim it. It can be used only for purposes of the Charter of Auroville, this land. There is a third point of this act which is also to be remembered. This act, like any other act, does require a management board, a governing board. The question was how to make this governing board act in such a way that what is envisaged for Auroville what we call the divine governance. I don't even call it self-governance. So that divine governance of Auroville can become possible. So that all the freedom that you need for making Auroville governed by the divine becomes possible. And if you read the Act very clearly, you'll find that this is perfectly possible. It was so formulated because the very important point is a full line on this subject which gives a policy decision of the Parliament of India. It should be ensured that the freedom of people of Auroville is not infringed and that they are free to develop Auroville according to the Charter of Auroville. So the only limitation on the freedom of people of Auroville is if they try to develop Auroville against the Charter of Auroville, not in accordance with the Charter of Auroville. Then only they have limitation. As long as you develop Auroville according to the Charter of Auroville, this freedom has been given, and I must tell you that such a provision does not exist in any institution today. This kind of freedom. And as I told you, we have taken a great care to see that this freedom was not defined in the Charter, in the Act, deliberately. We had avoided putting down that this particular freedom will be exercised by election. Because the moment we had put that kind of a clause, then the present democracy would have been clamped on Auroville. And this was completely avoided. As a result, you have a complete freedom even to shape how you will determine the governance of Auroville. You might say that it was a very difficult task for the government to adopt this kind of an act, but I know that by sheer mother's grace, this I tell you from my personal experience, by sheer grace of the mother, this was adopted, enacted, and declared as an act of India. Lot of labor has gone into it, and therefore I regard it to be a gift. I make this point because very often, sometimes I hear in Auroville or elsewhere, we want to see that government is completely eliminated from Auroville. This kind of statement I am hearing quite often. And with all goodwill, because the idea of self-governance is so interpreted as though, as I said, egoistically and not rightly. And it is that which is to be understood rightly is what I would like to explain to you. Supposing you want to make government completely out of the picture, what do? Remember, the land will immediately go back. You will have no land at all. You have to buy new lands if you make anything new for yourself. You will have to make a society, and society will have management committee. It's a law of India. You cannot avoid it. Every society has a management committee and does not guarantee the freedom of the people who become members of the society. I would like you to understand this aspect very well before declaring we want to be completely out of the government. This particular act has been so designed that even as it is, whatever it is, You have complete freedom to develop Auroville according to the Charter of Auroville. There is nobody who can prevent you. As long as you say and you can show that you want nothing but Charter of Auroville. You have complete freedom. And how is this being designed? There are three provisions in the Act which says there will be a governing body. There will be an International Advisory Council, and there will be a Residence Assembly. And all the three are equal authorities. And what will be the relationship between these three organizations, three bodies? The relationship is that of mutuality. And this word mutuality is very important. When I read some of the passages from Sri Aurobindo, it will become clearer that this word mutuality is very important. The true soul experience is an experience of mutuality. Egoistic experience is an experience which wants to throw away everybody else egoistically, as if we have nothing to do with anybody else. Even if you try to do it, it is impossible. In this world, as Sri Aurobindo says, there are always three terms of existence: the individual, the group in which he lives, and larger groups, and largest group, which is humanity as a whole. And nobody can get rid of these three terms. The world cannot get rid of groups and the individuals. Individual cannot give up group on the largest group, and no group can exist without a membership of individuals and the larger groups around. The three are interrelated. There is a spiritual unity of the three: individual, group, and the largest group. Therefore, if we are really spiritually governed, you will see mutuality of the three. It is in mutuality of the three, but it depends how you develop this mutuality. And Sri Aurobindo says, by no mechanical law can you attain to this mutuality. It is only when you develop true brotherhood and you exercise true brotherhood that this mutuality can be experienced and can be realized. Now, this Auroville Act has been so enacted that whether you like it or not, you are bound to develop brotherhood. It's a kind of a gift. This act is of such a nature that you are bound. Even if you want to throw away brotherhood, you are bound to have it. It's like a spiritual compulsion. It is laid down that Auroville will be organized by the people of Auroville. Secondly, that the freedom of individuals in Auroville, as long as they develop according to the charter, nobody can infringe it, not even governing board. Governing board, of course, has the power of control, supervision, to see that everything is run smoothly, and particularly that it is bound to promote the ideals of Auroville. This is the fundamental duty assigned, heavy responsibility assigned to it, ensure that the aims of charter are fully promoted and implemented. Advisory council, what is the most important function of the advisory council is to advise and to make sure that the freedom of the members of Auroville is guaranteed. This is the function of the advisory council. If governing board takes any arbitrary action by which the freedom of Auroville is infringed, if you can prove that this action infringes the freedom of Auroville to promote the charter of Auroville, it can be knocked down. So you can see the mutuality the governing board has to salute the Residence Assembly, has to give assurance to the Advisory Council that its actions are not arbitrary. Residence Assembly has to salute the governing board. Nothing wrong in saluting anybody. This is the called mutuality. Saluting each other is a fundamental law of life. To egoism, this kind of a salute is very difficult to digest. Why should I salute anybody in the world? But so long as we live in that consciousness, we are not acting according to the Charter of Auroville. Charter of Auroville says, you are to be willing servitor of the divine consciousness. And the divine consciousness, governing board is a part of divine consciousness. Residence Assembly is a part of divine consciousness. International Advisory Council is a part of divine consciousness. And more than that, wherever you turn, the divine exists and smiles. This is the scheme of this act. But there is a danger. I have told you right from the beginning when I came here, that although arbitrary action can be eliminated, but it may mean a struggle. Arbitrary action can be taken. Nobody can stop anybody's arbitrary action in this world. Anybody can act in any way he likes. Afterwards, consequences come later on. And therefore, I have said right from the beginning, this act has to be handled in a very delicate manner. I have said, you organize Auroville, internal organization in such a way, you establish harmony in such a way, you avoid quarrels in such a manner that there is no occasion for governing board to act, except to help you and to be helped. And this is where we are today. Today, we need urgently to prepare a procedure so that people of Auroville can take decisions freely, even without the need of even such temporary and small intervention of the governing board in the future. Let such a situation not arise. Let the conflict in Auroville not be of such a nature. Let quarrels not be of such a nature, because these quarrels are not part of the Auroville Charter. If quarrels exist, they exist in opposition to the divine's will. Of this there is no doubt. And let us therefore create such procedures by which we can have arrival and fulfillment of the divine's will. Now many people say we are not ready for divine's will. We are still very ordinary. My answer is, this is a very superficial understanding of Auroville. I have seen hundreds of people in Auroville totally dedicated to the divine consciousness. I have seen myself, and I can tell you truly, even this morning I had a meeting with young people, and they all have given to me their personal statement. And I'm very happy to say that all of them are very happy to be in Auroville. It's a very great thing. When the youth of a society is happy with the society, all is well. All of them have written to me, they are very happy to be in Auroville. It's a very good finding, you might say. And this can come about only if the inner spirit is burning. Therefore, if some people say, oh, we are not ready for it, I'll say, no, please, you are not right. I will urge you, please, develop your procedures in such a way that you can discover the divine's will. In any case, Mother had laid down as a very starting point that unless you are a willing servitor of divine consciousness, you have no right to stay in Auroville. So that is understood. That is why I always said, Auroville is an institution of an advanced research, where already people who come here have decided to discover the divine's will and to be servant of the divine's will. It's a very high level of entry point. I also feel that if you feel that we are not so ready, I like it also, because it's such a modesty among people that they don't want to claim that they are in such an exalted position, which is also understandable, good. To be modest is extremely good, which is divine. But for the sake of development of procedures in Auroville, I would urge you to consider that this should be your starting point. Our search must be to create such a system or lack of system, such a lack of machinery, because machinery always blunts the life force. Such a procedure, which is not a procedure, so that there is delicacy in the development of relationship of people, there is tact, flexibility, plasticity, swiftness, and there is a possibility of variation of the system according to the situation. A machine cannot vary according to different circumstances. But a machinery created by human beings dedicated to the divine's will can create a system by which it can vary according to the needs, according to circumstances, according to the people. And this task is given to us as a matter of experiment. Sri Aurobindo wrote a very important essay in the ideal of human unity, in which the title is Inadequacy of the State Idea. Now remember, we are not to make a state when we make residence assembly and its functioning. The state is an inadequate idea. And we should not create a state. Auroville should be a living body. And this is experiment. If this is not attempted, I would say I'm doing nothing. If you are going to create the kind of machinery which every parliament is doing everywhere in the world, then we are not making any experiment. We are not moving forward according to what we have to create. I'll read out to you the sentence where Sri Aurobindo said, how the state normally acts, and therefore by implication how we have to avoid it. Sri Aurobindo says, the state is bound to act crudely and in the mass. It is incapable of that free, harmonious, and intelligently or instinctively varied action which is proper to organic growth. For the state is not an organism, it is a machinery, and it works like a machine without tact, taste, delicacy, or intuition. It tries to manufacture, but what humanity is here to do is to grow and create. Therefore, if you have to create in Auroville a new method of development, a new method of a process of developing, a process is always a process of discipline. And discipline has always three aspects. One is outlining the method by which the process will flow. Secondly, statement of the elements which will act and interact in this flow. And thirdly, the right relationship between these elements. So we have to be very careful how we shall make this process and how the various elements in this process will be integrated, and what is the right relationship between them. My brotherly suggestion to you is, Mother has given a number of suggestions as to how Auroville should be organized. I think we should study them all very deeply. I have one complaint against many people in Auroville. They do not study. I tell you very frankly as a brother. But Mother has said very clearly, Auroville is for studies, for research, for experiment. And if you want to escape study, then you cannot develop Auroville. We have to study quite in detail. And we have to study everything that Mother has said about this. And we have to strive to understand and put them together. I personally believe that if you do it, even as a good experiment, I don't think that we have, as I said, I don't have any conclusions. I can only say that we need to study. But please make us study. This is a good time now. When we are trying to make, and I'm happy today that there is a very nice group today. I must tell you, Auroville Council today, I have met them. I'm extremely happy that they are so dedicated to the task. I can tell you very, very with my heart, they are really keen to make a deep study of the problem, and they are consulting people. Already two documents are in my own hands. And both of them have got their own value. I would like to say that all people in Auroville should think about it, study. Create such a procedure in Auroville that divine's will is manifested. Not, I would like to say very clearly, I do not like when it is said that residence assembly is the authority. No. Authority is only one in Auroville, the divine. And do not say divine is some abstract idea somewhere else, not at all. It was said in the Supreme Court by somebody that when Mother declared that Auroville belongs to nobody in particular but to humanity as a whole, it was contended that this was only a platitude written by the Mother. It's not true. It's really meant. Therefore, to say that how shall we make our procedure in such a way that divine will is manifested? But if you don't do it, we are not working for Auroville at all. There is only one authority. Mother has said in the dream, the very first line, there must be a place somewhere where nobody can claim authority except the truth. And this is where we are. We have to do it. And I'm happy to say all this because I know that in Auroville there are hundreds of people who are very, very keen that this ideal is realized. They feel we are here for that purpose and nothing else. We don't want anything short of it. How many people have come to me and told me this? And I'm very happy to tell you. Therefore, if anybody says, oh, this is not possible, I will categorically say it is not true. If you really make an effort, and if you don't do it, it means that if you can't do it, it means that we have not made the effort. Actually, Mother has said, do not attempt, succeed. And I think we have to do it. And I think we can do it. For the consideration of everybody, I can only offer my own suggestions. And therefore I say this is a study I am making. I would suggest that your procedure should not end in a decision or decision making, because it will be a decision made by the people who are seated, not by the divine. I would suggest that decision should be allowed to evolve, not decision making. The procedure that you lay down should be such that decision evolves and evolves at every step by the guidance of the divine. All mechanical processes are the process by which you can start and you can end. You can fabricate, you can manufacture, but you can't create. So this is my first suggestion. My second suggestion is that you should involve everybody, and there should be a decision taken by everybody that we are a collective. So that if somebody afterwards boycotts it, it's not right. You are a collectivity, you are brothers of everybody. How can you boycott? We shall all move together, swim together. We are all here as a collectivity, and this must be the first decision taken by the Residence Assembly. Residence Assembly is an assembly of a collectivity, of living human beings who have decided we shall all live together and swim together. If this decision is not taken in the very first meeting of Residence Assembly, then you stop. This is my advice to you. In the very first meeting after this, let us all take a decision. We are a collectivity and we shall work together. I don't want that we should quarrel, but even if you quarrel, we shall quarrel together to remain together. So this is the second step. The third step I would suggest is that this Auroville Council, which has been constituted, according to me very wisely because it was made by the will of the people of Auroville by suggesting one or two names whom they trusted most. So let us say, according to Auroville, the present members of Auroville Council, they are there as trustees, not as a public trust management committee. They are trustees, they are upholders of the trust of the people of Auroville. It's a sacredness. And let us all give the respect and the due consideration to the Auroville Council. I will request you all. And this is a discipline. The discipline means there is always, in the whole situation, an umpire. There may be one umpire, two umpires, three umpires. Without umpires, you cannot organize anything. I would regard Auroville Council as an umpire. And I would like Auroville Council, therefore, and already I have seen how much time they are devoting to the work, and I am really very happy. Even yesterday evening I had a meeting with the members of this Auroville Council. I was extremely happy to meet them. They can invite all the people to participate. To be a trustee means to be a trustee. Trustee is never an authority. Trustee is always holding a trust and acts for the welfare of everybody. Secondly, the next point that I would like to make is that whenever a proposal is to be made, let it not be only a proposal in which there is bound to be agreement or disagreement. Residence assembly is not an instrument of agreement or disagreement. This whole concept is wrong. You invite arguments and for and against. The very starting point is not correct. Residence assembly should meet from time to time, basically, to generate harmony. Simply. I would even suggest in quietude. There should be monthly, weekly, fortnightly, one meeting of Residence Assembly. Invite everyone. I have never seen even till today all the residents of Auroville together. Please make that miracle possible, where all the residents of Auroville come together in a huge assemblage of people, where they can be very quiet and each one sincerely seeking the manifestation of Divine's will. I tell you, the prayer is always answered. There is no question about it. This is based upon the yogic knowledge. As Mother has said, a true prayer is answered instantaneously. Therefore, if anybody says that I did not get divine guidance or divine answer, it means you have not asked the divine sincerely. If you sincerely meet and talk to the divine in your heart, and if this is done weekly, monthly, a real collectivity will be gathered and will be created, all dedicated to the divine's will. We have to be reminded every time we are here for the divine. So I would like to suggest that Residence Assembly is basically a collectivity for promotion of the knowledge of the divine's will. Nothing else. All else is secondary. Let it be declared to everybody. This is the purpose, main aim of Residence Assembly. We are all here servitors of the divine consciousness. Let this sense grow, mature, become powerful. It's like an army of the divine on the earth. And this is what I would like to say. This is Residence Assembly. Not an assembly which meets to discuss and debate and argue. It can be, but it is temporary, it is subordinate. Basic is this. I would suggest that the fundamental task of Residence Assembly should be defined very clearly. At one time it was said that fundamental function of Residence Assembly is to arrive at an agreement. Even this statement is good, but it is not sufficient. It is to mature constantly the sense of all of us as a collectivity devoted to the divine's will. Then, there are 4 principles which Mother has given very clearly: harmony, goodwill, discipline, and truth. Particularly in Matri Mandir, Mother has given specially this message. And I would like that these 4 principles are nurtured constantly in Auroville, constantly. And we must know what are the meanings of these 4 words. This is a matter of exploration again, and I would only suggest what I think is the meaning of these 4 words. Harmony is the delight of meeting together, of remaining together. If somebody wants to run away, if somebody is not prepared to shake hands, it's not harmony. The delight of being together, meeting together, this experience of delight is, according to me, harmony. What is goodwill? Goodwill is intense wish that everybody in the world should attain his utmost fulfillment, and that constant striving that everyone really attains to his personal fulfillment, his highest fulfillment. This is how I define goodwill. It is not good neighborliness. It's a difficult exercise in which you should really will that everyone, every other one particularly, should attain to his highest fulfillment. And that you have a will that you contribute so that the others' highest fulfillment is achieved. And discipline always implies right constitutional knowledge of all the elements in a procedure. Discipline arises only out of the fact that there is always a hierarchy. People tell me in Auroville, mother never wanted hierarchy. It is not true. It is not true. Mother herself has written at length on hierarchy. It is true, mother is opposed to what is called human way of dealing with hierarchy or creating hierarchy. But as mother has said very clearly, there is always a hierarchy. Hierarchy, however, is not arbitrary. It is not an imposition of one over the other. But there are leaders who have no power excepting the power to guide, not to rule, but to guide, to be helpful. And therefore, in discipline, you must understand that everywhere, in any situation, as Sri Aurobindo says, there is equality not of hierarchy, but equality of usefulness. It's a very profound statement of Sri Aurobindo. There is equality. Even in hierarchy, there is equality. But equality not of hierarchy, but equality of usefulness. Everyone is useful. And we must know his usefulness and his right place of usefulness. To discover the right place of usefulness of everyone, that is discipline. And fourthly, truth, which is the most difficult thing. And as mother has said, truth cannot be defined but can be lived. This statement itself is difficult to understand. In my own humble way, I can only say that if an individual constantly tells the divine, "O Lord, make me truthful," then this will be lived. This is my understanding of this. If you tell the divine, if you pray to the divine, "O Lord, make me truthful, always make me do the right things," it will happen. It will be lived. And truth will manifest. But this is my understanding. I am only suggesting, as I said, I am only making a study. And I would say that Residence Assembly should make it very clear. Its purpose is to promote harmony, goodwill, discipline, truth. Now, as far as the procedures are concerned, when a problem arises, as I said, do not call Residence Assembly only when problem arises. Residence Assembly, as today morning one very nice student told me, she said, "Why do we discuss all the time difficult problems? Why don't we discuss all the time some very good things happening in Auroville? Why don't we say this?" It's exactly like newspapers. Newspapers always bring sensational news of quarrels and conflicts. But they rarely speak of things which are happening, which are marvelous in themselves. I think Residence Assembly should really be convened for this purpose. But incidentally, when there's a problem also, you can discuss, but in that new atmosphere, if Residence Assembly meets from time to time to see how harmonious activities are being done, and if this is highlighted, then those quarrelsome problems also will get their proper place in the totality, and they will not loom large in the meetings of the Residence Assemblies. Now, all the procedures which have been thought are good. All the problems should be studied. I would only suggest that they be studied fast. In this world, swiftness is very important. You can organize your society in such a way that you can take decisions after a long, long time. By that time, the forces have increased, bitterness is increased, and the problems become incapable of solution in due course. I would really make a suggestion. Please find the ways, as Mother has said always, do everything as perfectly as possible and as quickly as possible. Combine the two things together and you will get the optimum speed of solution of a problem. We must deliberately see that the problem is solved as soon as possible. And then I would suggest that you should always have a recourse when the problems are difficult, and I think you are going to have many difficult problems about economy of Auroville, organization of Auroville, education of Auroville, entry system of Auroville. These are all difficult problems. And they have to be resolved. They have to be straightened. And therefore the necessity of sitting now together and seeing how we shall go about it. Conflicts can arise. There will be a lot of bickering again. And I want that it should not. Why should it be? You should really, for any problem, I would suggest, for the sake of experimentation, appoint 2 or 3 persons as umpires. You know, Mother has spoken of 7 or 8 people of intuitive intelligence, but I am told that such people do not obtain in Auroville, which is not true. But anyway, there is a difficulty. So I would simply say, there is in Taittiriya Upanishad a guidance. It's an old scripture in India, Taittiriya Upanishad, that when you are in doubt, find out a person who is learned and who is pure. Find out. At least there will be somebody who is learned, like Vladimir. Somebody who is learned and pure. Who is not severe and who is not cruel. The second quality given. Who is not severe and who is not cruel. And who is a worshipper of virtue. Who practices generosity, altruism, beneficence, charities, cheerfulness, sincerity. Find out, I'm sure that you will certainly, for every problem, you find out, even before the problem is beginning to be resolved, you appoint right from the beginning so that everybody knows that these 3 persons are going to have a view which will have great weight. I don't say decisive weight. Don't give decisive weight to anybody. But there will be some people whom you can consult, so that there is no tyranny of majority or minority. This is a very big problem. All decisions taken today are either by majority or by consensus. If you do by consensus, there is a tyranny of the veto of one individual. Otherwise, you have a majority-minority problem. Majority tyrannizes the minority. That also is not right. There must be reference to people of this kind, who have thought over the problems and who are really watching the progress of the development of discussions and so on. So there should be not one study group. You can have one study group plus this umpire, 2 or 3 persons already appointed, and Auroville Council as I told you, I regard Auroville Council to be very important. And you should insist that Auroville Council at least should have a consensus. If they are really trustees, if they are all together, they should at least be able to arrive at a consensus on the problem. They should be free from this pressure of partialities and preferences. They are trustees. So, consensus on the part of the members of Auroville Council, this can be modified according to the circumstances. A body of 3 persons as umpires, a study group, and discussion with the parties who are not happy. And the task of Auroville Council should be to see that goodwill is spread, harmony is spread, discipline is obtained. If you find that somebody has a point of view which is in favor of indiscipline, it should be made very clear, my dear brother, this is indiscipline according to our view at least. You may not accept, but according to our view, this is indiscipline. They must declare it if they find it to be so. If you find there is so much of egoistic affirmation, you should say, this view of yours is highly egoistic. Auroville Council should constantly have this charge of saying this. It may be wrong, it may say, we may be wrong, but correct us. It is by reciprocal kind of corrections. So, parties concerned, a study group, and umpire of 3 learned people, and Auroville Council. According to me, if you put all this together, these elements, and the parties in question which are in conflict, and have dialogue, real dialogue at different stages, I personally feel a solution will emerge. And if everybody prays to the divine, we want to follow only the divine's decision, not our decision. And this is the task, according to me, of a Residence Assembly. Well, these are the thoughts which I have in my mind, which I thought I'll share with you for whatever word they may be. It's an exploration, and I would, if you have any questions, I would like to converse with you on any questions. Thank you.